We're going to take the clock apart. We're going to put it back together, even better this time, with blackjack and hookers. Clock is a Hulu original written and directed by Alexis Jack now. God, I can only imagine the amount of jokes that was made at her expense during school, but nevertheless, she's done shorts and has acted in various movies and has a small part in this. And this centers around a woman named Ella, a woman named Ella, hey. Okay, enough of that. Played by Diana Argon, not Aragon. No, there's no weirdly voiced dragon in this movie. More in the pity, might have made it a little bit more interesting. Actually, that's unfair because there's some good ideas here. Ella is a woman whose biological clock is ticking and she feels the pressure, breathe the pressure. Come test my game, I'll test ya. Psychosomatic, I screwed that up. Nevertheless, basically, she doesn't feel like she can breathe. She has a successful career, but she has a very heavy influence from her dad and various friends and pretty much everybody she comes into contact with to have a goddamn kid. She doesn't want to have a kid. She's very happy with her husband, Aiden, played by Jay Ali, fabulous he, Ali. I'm sorry, I tried to resist saying that. Anytime somebody has the last name Ali, I feel compelled to say that because the Aladdin movie is forever entrenched in my mind. The animated one, not the terrible live action movie. So, Ella basically is at I'm going to keep this as spoiler free as possible. She's at a baby shower for her friend Shauna, played by Grace Porter, whose character probably should have been utilized a little bit more. I mean, I get what they were trying to go for, but she sees her pregnant. She even sees something weird moving in the womb, like the baby kicking, literally kicking and almost forcing the foot out of the skin. Okay, that would be painful. But they're like, oh, come on. The friends are like, you gotta have a kid. You gotta have a kid. Well, Ella is entering that unfortunate age bracket where pretty much, I think after 35, it's kind of dangerous for a lot of women to have kids. I know there are some that do, and they're mostly healthy. But because of biology and body chemistry and all that, it's dangerous after the 35th year for women to have children because of the pain, the body changes, and all that. She is talking to her husband. Her and her husband use contraceptives. That's protection for those of us that don't understand big words like that. And she also feels pressure from her dad because of the lineage of continuing the family, bloodline. And there's also a Jewish influence because of there's a bit of a Holocaust theme that becomes a little more prevalent as time goes on. And she feels a lot of this pressure, and she talks to her doctor, and her doctor says, well, if you want to have a kid, you kind of need to do it now. Here's an idea. Let me refer you to somebody that does clinical trials, experimental clinical trials, a biotech company. That's always a great sign in a horror movie when you have a biotech company doing clinical trials. And she goes there, takes part in these, blowing off a job opportunity, that is, not telling her significant other, and then through various circumstances and various trials, she goes through with it, but starts seeing very, very strange things. And are they all in her head? Is she happy? Is she feeling bad? Does she have sunshine in a bag? Is she useless? Not for long, because this movie keeps plodding along. She basically ends up seeing strange things, but decides to go through with it because she's being manipulated to want to have a baby. And her husband's thrilled, but he's thrilled to be with her, and he seems all great. And the dad, is all this pressure and all this stuff. And basically, it's a social commentary on women being forced to want to have kids, even if they don't. And that's a neat little idea for a horror movie. That's actually a pretty good social commentary. And I understand what Clock was trying to go for. And maybe there's a personal touch from the writer-director that, was put into this movie, and there are a few neat little ideas. That being said, I hated this. This was absolutely terrible, pretty much on every single level, because any of the good ideas immediately get stamped down. The third act is completely goddamn bonkers, straight out of deep water, and yes, they tried the whole thing where it might all be in her head, or this might really be happening. There might be pure evil out there And the pressure is finally weighed on her, being told that she has to have a kid even if she doesn't want to. You shouldn't force anybody to have children if they don't fucking want to. That's really what it comes down to. But the horror elements of this movie are so cliched and ridiculous, and this reeks of a movie that had a good idea to begin with and then was basically had studio interference and like, hey, we're funding this, but could you put this stuff in there? Could you make it a little more generic? Could you rush this stuff along? Because those few decisions I talked about where she is at the baby shower, she is, pressured by her dad, and even though her husband's supportive, all that stuff, and blowing off a particular job opportunity to go to this clinical trial or this, biotech company, this all happens within the first 15 minutes after the opening. And it's a 90-minute movie. It's simultaneously rushed and also, plods along with some things. A lot of the stuff isn't given a chance to really breathe. You could have thought this movie should have been 2 hours with stuff more fleshed out, but unfortunately, the stuff they left in made you not want to watch much of anything. Now, there are some moments that would be effective if it wasn't so hilarious and it wasn't so goddamn on the nose where it's beating you in the goddamn skull with the social commentary. Ow, I have head injuries. I probably shouldn't do that. But the movie just ends up being a series of missed opportunities where the idea is there, the execution is absolutely terrible. And I'm sorry, but even the acting, like Diana Argan has been good in other stuff, and likely will be good in, as far as like being good in future projects. Melora Hardin, who is the doctor, Elizabeth Simmons, she's fine, but really just a one-note character. Jay Ali is all right, and Grace isn't given much of a chance to do anything as Shauna, and then the dad, Joseph, without his amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, is just kind of your typical guilt-ridden, guilt-imposing Jewish dad stereotype, that is. The thing is, the movie just gets more hilarious and ridiculous, and any subtlety that this movie could have had basically just gets thrown out the goddamn window for cliches and ridiculousness and stuff for, oh, we're here and no, oh, maybe this isn't really happening here. Oh, it is happening, and oh, we're going to do this. And that's the plot of Clock. Nothing scary about it. The hilarity of the third act made me think that this had to have been an unintentional comedy. It ends up being one of the worst things that I've seen in a while. This might be one of the worst movies of the year because I did hate this. I laughed at it. And I recognize that I might not be the target audience for this, but I love horror movies, and I've seen some really good ones that I've given a chance, and I wanted to give this a chance. Because Hulu sometimes has done some pretty good stuff. Bad Hair was pretty goddamn good, and a few others that are just skipping through my mind because I have reviewed a lot of shit since 2019, especially since 2020, pandemic and being at home and all that. Yeah, Clock isn't very good. It's about the biological clock. Do you get it? Do you get it? They only mentioned that about 80 million times during the runtime. Yeah, I'm going to get into spoilers. So, yeah, acting is kind of over the top. Characters aren't really all that fleshed out. And any subtlety is just thrown out the goddamn window along with the baby with the bathwater because we're just going to do more stupid horror shit to the point that the laughter just rolls out and it's executed badly. Anyway, 3, 2, 1, spoilers. Okay, so there's an opening scene where a woman is crying. She hangs herself on a swing set, and a metal piece falls out of her vagina, as it were. We find out what that is a little bit later. Ella doesn't want to have kids. She wants to be there for her friend Shauna. Other people are pressuring her. She's seeing all this weird stuff going on. A kid falls in the background, seemingly like, oh, kids are such a blessing. And then one falls from like this gazebo or whatever. And then the doctor is examining her because her mother had breast cancer and died of breast cancer when she was her age, which is terrible. Or had breast cancer. The whole point is like there are so many moments where you're not sure if characters are actually dead or it's just all in their head. But yeah, her mother had breast cancer at her age, so she's getting examined. And then the doctor says, hey, by the way, if you want to have a kid, go to this biotech company. Sure. Yeah, biotech companies, that's a great idea. But Ella is very successful. We see this in a montage of her having a great life and having sex and getting massages and being a successful businesswoman. They don't need no goddamn kids. And then we have the dinner with the dad and the husband. And guilt trip over this. There's a grandfather clock that becomes very symbolic over beating you in the head and everything. It was saved from the war. I don't know how the thing is the size of a tall building, but they saved that, and the grandmother went through a whole lot, the mother went through a whole lot, the dad went through a whole lot, like especially just the after effects of all of World War II, and it's absolutely terrible that there are people that deny that the Holocaust didn't happen. How fucking dare you, you goddamn idiots! But she basically decides with her husband, yeah, you know what, let's have a kid. Wait, I don't necessarily want to do this, honey, unless you want to do it. But then, this biotech company offers to fix her biological clock that's broken. And then she has this dream job that she's going to start in a week. So she leaves that dream job, calls the person on the phone, and says, I can't do this. And then goes to this biotech company that has the meta symbol and everything. That's a great idea. That's a great image. It's like regenesis. Some side effects may occur. Anyway. So yeah, she leaves that dream job. And again, all this stuff happens by the time we get to talking to the doctor, where the doctor is saying it's cognitive behavioral therapy. We're going to warp your goddamn mind, basically, to make you want a kid, even though you really don't want it, but you feel pressured into doing this. That's basically what it is. All within 20 to 25 minutes, and we're going through this. We are clipping just through plot points and stuff that could have been fleshed out, and we just throw all this stuff in there. So she then does therapy stuff. She sees some cards that have weird 3D effects. I think is where about 20% of the budget went. Certainly didn't go to other things. Nevertheless, if it's a small budget movie, that's fine. You work with what you have. But she sees a pile of dead bugs, makes her reflect on Jewish past, what her grandmother and what her family has had to deal with, and also a very, very tall woman that it's kind of like straight out of The Crooked Man or straight out of being, in that Marilyn Manson Beautiful People video, where the ones are on stilts, and it creeped me out as a 15-year-old kid. In hindsight, it actually was goofy. So, the giant grandfather clock, tick, 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 all that, it drives her nuts. It haunts her. Even other clocks are ticking and driving her nuts. She takes it and puts it on the floor, evidently thinking that's going to stop the goddamn clock from ticking when you could just take the batteries out. Or just ask them to unplug it. And she refers to it as a grandfather coffin because of the connotation from World War II. And yes, it's a horrifying tragedy, but the thing that makes that more horrifying, obviously there were more people that got, there were tons of tragedies, tons of examples of genocide, rather, is what I should say, but Ella says this, that wealthy and educated people were involved in this. Educated. But nevertheless, terrible thing, and that's a theme that kind of goes over this. Oh, by the way, there's going to be an implant also, and it can't be removed, or you can't have kids. That's not necessarily something that you want to put in you, but whatever. What the hell do I know about biology? Don't worry, it really does get easier once you make it through the tank. I believe that was the director doing a small role. The director, by the way, is very attractive, and I think should be in more roles, and I mean that with respect. She has a good screen presence about her. She shows some potential here with the execution of certain scenes, but the finished product is really, really sloppy, and it's unfortunately a missed opportunity, and then followed by many more. I'm not saying it's her fault, but that's just what ended up happening with the finished product. So, into the tank where there's all these images assaulting her and everything, and it's like, oh, Joanna, don't worry, you want a kid, you want a kid, you want that baby, you want that baby. And there's a baby swinging like a pendulum out of her vagina, as it were. And oh boy, that's certainly something. And then she sees a tall woman, but then hits her head. And then it turns out that she's seen all this stuff. Or maybe she's not. Maybe the tall woman is just like saying, I'm going to make this movie interesting because by this point, we're just going to go totally goofy. And she's absolutely nuts by this point. Absolutely insane. The dog shows up. for one scene and is barking at her. The dog knows all. The dog knows there is something wrong with the human mother. What is wrong with you? Why the dog talks like that, I don't know. I'm just going to roll with it. And she decides to cook herself something. She can't have sex for 3 weeks, by the way, after this implant. And she's cooking eggs, doesn't really cook them, and is eating the yolks. And eggs, eggs, like fertility eggs. Yes, movie, we get it. We absolutely goddamn get it. Oh, you're going to keep doing this with her eating eggs. You're going to keep doing this. Oh, okay. Subtlety is not this movie's strong suit by this point, because, again, subtlety got thrown out along with the baby in the bathwater. And then there's a spider womb. Spider womb does whatever a spider womb does. And basically she's at this part where she's been painting this nursery for her friend Shauna, and then she sees this tarantula on her womb, and she's going to hit it with a book. The spider isn't actually there, but even if it was, pick up the spider and just move it. Just move it off. Tarantulas actually aren't that bad. But nevertheless, she's going absolutely insane. Dr. Simmons is checking on her. Ella is losing it. She can't remember where paint is in an aisle that she always checks. She's trying to do all this stuff. Is there any side effects? Well, what if there are? Well, we'll stop your meds immediately. No, we're really good people. We swear. And then more ticking clocks, straight out of the Coldplay video. And we get a photo album with the tall woman that was malnourished, and that's the grandma. And the dad snaps and starts ripping up the photos and going insane. And then she just continues to go absolutely nuts. The nursery was all messed up with weird imagery, dark imagery, and then suddenly Shauna asks, where did my friend go? Then her water breaks, and then she starts taking that sheet. Sorry, too many pronouns, pal. Sorry, Vince McMahon. Ella is panicking or freaking out and taking the amniotic fluid and putting it in her mouth. What? Because she really wants a kid. But she doesn't. Because she's been messed up in the head by this cognitive behavioral therapy shit. And then her dad, she goes to check on her dad. She's checking on him. He's very injured. He's trying to talk to her and apologizing to her. And then she breaks apart the grandfather clock and destroys it. And then the doctor checks on her. She goes to check on the husband, or she, sees her husband at home. A.k.a. Ella sees her husband at home. And they're about to fuck on the goddamn countertop. And then the implant chomps his dick. Straight out of the Teeth movie. What is this? Oh my god, I'm bleeding. And then she sees a bag with the meta symbol from that same clinic. And apparently the doctor, or her husband, who is a doctor, that was mentioned, I think, in one scene. I don't think we ever actually saw him at work. We had to make more stuff for the tall woman and other things that were goofy. But anyway, the husband doctor, basically said, I just wanted to help you. And then she basically shoves him down and runs and drives off to the clinic to talk to the doctor, Elizabeth Simmons. And then she's freaking out. She says, she's like, I think I'm getting a divorce. Well, honey, you don't need a husband. You just need sperm to have a kid. That's a good point. Let's go do that. And then she knocks the doctor over and takes the implant out of her. Just takes a little Nuva ring out of her. And then the police are called. She takes off. Ella takes off. And then it turns out that Aiden called the police because she didn't she didn't destroy the grandfather clock. She ripped apart her father. Why? Because movie? She's all upset and she's tired of being told what to do. And then she gets arrested, by the police, handcuffed, and then jumps off. The dad had earlier referenced that he saw the light, and he saw the family, and then and then the fish jumping out of the sea and everything, evolution and rebirth and all that, I assume. I don't really know or care by this point. And then she jumps off the cliff, she ends up on the rock, and she sees the fish coming up on the rock, and then that's it. Then it ends. Then it goddamn ends. Eat shit, Clock. The ending was, the last 20 to 30 minutes was goddamn hilarious. At least to me it was. Because it was so bonkers and so stupid and so ridiculously paced, I just couldn't help but laugh at it. Because, we're faking out, we're faking out. Yeah, you can only do so many fake outs before it ends up just being terrible. Really, really terrible. I'm sorry, even though the ideas could have worked, and there were a couple neat little scenes, it gets an F. This is one of the worst things of the year. Am I going to get hate for it? Probably. But I recognize there is talent involved. I just wish that it was utilized better. And I'm not even saying the writer-director did the worst thing in the world. It was just a badly executed final product. Anyway, F. Agree, disagree what I said? Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.